Island and Karen. They're actually playing that right now. England and Netherlands are playing right now. No, tomorrow. Tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow. We're playing at the same time. Tomorrow. Well, maybe we'll see you tomorrow.
Ik loop even...
go up on your mic just in case.
Ik loop even een ander museum. Dat kan wel super zijn. Ja, dat is een tuinmuseum. Dat? Kunnen we niet doen? Dus dat even op terug. Ja?
Ja, kan je. Anders van mij?
Dit vind je wel...
Yeah, there's Paphos. And I'll send it to you. And we'll see if there's Dublin, and we'll go out and take a note, and then come back and do some like that. That's it. Maybe we might do therapy together. Oh, okay. They got the RF monitor in there? I guess. Right. No, right here. No problem. Deals today will get picked up and then dropped off. I don't know where that location is. I don't know if it's near it. I guess it's near it.
Level check this. We'll see you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Distinguished guests, please take your seats. Our program will begin momentarily. Invités distingués, veuillez prendre vos places. Le programme commencera bientôt. Distinguished guests, welcome to the Andrew W. Mellon Auditorium for an event commemorating the 75th anniversary of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Invités distingués, bienvenue à l'Auditorium Andrew W. Mellon pour la commémoration du 75e anniversaire de l'Organisation du Traité de l'Atlantique Nord. Delegation of the European Union, Ukraine, and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization Indo-Pacific partner countries. Invités distingués, les chefs de délégation de l'Union européenne, l'Ukraine et les pays partenaires indo-pacifiques de l'Organisation du Traité de l'Atlantique Nord. Distinguished, the President of the United States, accompanied by the Secretary General of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the NATO allied leaders. Invité distingué, le Président des États-Unis, accompagné par le Secrétaire général de l'Organisation du Traité de l'Atlantique Nord et les alliés OTAN. Distinguished guests, the NATO allies. Invités distingués, les alliés OTAN.
The day of days for America and her allies. Celebrations throughout the country at the end of the greatest war in history.
In April 1949, 12 nations came together in Washington to sign the North Atlantic Treaty.
The Russians had not demobilized. They retained overwhelmingly the largest force in Europe.
From Budapest come the first pictures of the battle which has shaken the world.
In Berlin, bricks, mortar, wire make up what decent people call the war.
Buzaiko, fusilier marin des États-Unis.
Tonight we gather to celebrate resilience, courage, and the power of transformative experiences. Mr. President, leaders, and distinguished guests, my own journey has been shaped by two profound chapters: my father's survival in a concentration camp and my service in the Marine Corps. These experiences have instilled in me resilience, offered invaluable perspective, and deepened my appreciation for life's complexities. They underscore the importance of individuals who their courage and sacrifice go beyond the call of duty. Tonight, as we come together to honor such remarkable stories and achievements, let us be inspired by the profound impact one person's journey can have on shaping our world. It is my privilege to introduce and welcome one of those individuals this evening, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, a distinguished leader who has shaped the course of NATO's history. Secretary General Stoltenberg has served as NATO Secretary General since October 2014. Across a career that has included service as Prime Minister of Norway and UN Special Envoy for Climate Change, Secretary General Stoltenberg has shaped the global response to the most pressing challenges of our day. His tenure at NATO has been marked by groundbreaking initiatives. Under his leadership, NATO has implemented its largest reinforcement of collective defense since the Cold War, enhancing readiness to address terrorism, cyber threats, and hybrid warfare. Secretary General Stoltenberg's leadership underscores the importance of unity and commitment among allies, ensuring NATO remains at the forefront of global security challenges. Please join me in welcoming Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg.
Thank you. President Biden, heads of state and government, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to be with you here today, and it's good to see so many friends. 75 years ago, in this very room, NATO's founding document, the Washington Treaty, was signed. Our alliance was created by people who had lived through two devastating world wars. They knew only too well the horror, the suffering, and the terrible human cost of war. They were determined that this should never happen again. So they founded NATO, with a clear purpose: to preserve peace and safeguard freedom. A solemn promise, an ironclad commitment to protect each other. One for all and all for one. I have great respect for the Washington Treaty, not least because it is so short. Just 14 paragraphs, only a few pages. Never have so few words meant so much to so many. Peace has been preserved, freedom has been safeguarded. That makes NATO the most successful alliance in history. When I arrived at NATO 10 years ago, I was told that while it may be the most successful alliance in history, it was not the longest lasting. That honor belonged to the Delian League of ancient Greek city-states. But the League lasted 74 years. So in this 75th anniversary of our alliance, we can finally say that NATO is not only the most successful and the strongest, but also the longest lasting alliance in history. To understand the enduring success of NATO, it is important to recognize our transatlantic alliance was never a given. On the contrary, it is a result of deliberate choices and difficult decisions. Starting with NATO's creation. After World War II, many Americans wanted to leave Europe and bring their boys back home, just as the United States did after World War I. Fortunately, this time, courageous leaders on both sides of the Atlantic were able to defy opposition and create a transatlantic alliance to deter the Soviet threat. Gradually, a bold and controversial idea emerged that we needed to talk to our enemy to minimize the risk of an arms race spiraling out of control and leading to nuclear Armageddon. Step by step, to difficult talks and hard negotiations, an architecture of arms control was agreed. Thousands of weapons were destroyed, transparency and trust built. The world became a safer place due to deterrence and defense, but also due to disarmament and dialogue. And in time, the Cold War ended without NATO firing a shot. This opened an historic window of opportunity and brought us to another critical decision: whether to enlarge NATO and welcome all adversaries as new allies. The countries of the former Warsaw Pact had already made their choice. They all wanted to join our alliance. Towering personalities like Lech Walesa and Václav Havel led the way. The question was whether we were ready to open our door. Some feared that enlargement would dilute and weaken NATO and provoke Moscow. Just as at previous crossroads, it was not an obvious choice. It was not an easy decision, and it took time. But in the end, we stood up for the right of every nation to choose its own path. We opened NATO's door. Hardly any decision in modern history has changed Europe more profoundly. NATO enlargement unified Europe in a way that was previously unthinkable, paved the way for EU integration, and brought peace and prosperity across the continent. Allies showed clarity and determination then, as we must continue to do now. Russia's war against Ukraine is the biggest security crisis in generations. Ukraine has shown remarkable courage, and NATO allies have provided unprecedented support. But let's be honest, not even our support for Ukraine has been a given. It is not straightforward, because our support comes with costs and risks. The reality is there are no cost-free options with an aggressive Russia as a neighbor. There are no risk-free options in a war. And remember, the biggest cost and the greatest risk will be if Russia wins in Ukraine. We cannot let that happen. Not only would it embolden President Putin, it will also embolden other authoritarian leaders in Iran, in North Korea, and China. They all support Russia's brutal war. They all want NATO to fail. So the outcome of this war will shape global security for decades to come. The time to stand for freedom and democracy is now. The place is Ukraine. Over the last 75 years, the transatlantic relationship has weathered many storms. We are bound together not only by interests, but also by history, tradition, and values. But our alliance should not be taken for granted. It was not a given in 1949. It is not a given now. And it will not be a given in the decades to come. Everyone in this room has the responsibility as political leaders, as experts, as citizens. We must show the same courage and determination in the future as was demonstrated in the past when NATO was founded and shaped. The future of our alliance depends not least on our men and women in uniform. They put their lives on the line each and every day to keep us safe. Yesterday, I laid a wreath at Arlington National Cemetery to pay my respects for those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. We owe them an eternal debt of gratitude. We honor them all. Mr. President, dear friends, our alliance is not perfect, and we will continue to face difficult decisions in the future. I do not know what the next crisis will be, but I do know that we are at our best when we take difficult decisions with political courage and moral clarity. And I know that we are stronger and safer together in NATO. It is good to have friends. Thank you.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm,
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States. Invité distingué, le Président des États-Unis.
Welcome. In 1949, the leaders of 12 countries, including President Truman, came together in this very room. History was watching. It had been 4 years since the surrender of the Axis powers and the end of the most devastating war the world had ever known. Here, these 12 leaders gathered to make a sacred pledge to defend each other against aggression, provide their collective security, and to answer threats as one, because they knew to prevent future wars, to protect democracies, to lay the groundwork for lasting peace and prosperity, they needed a new approach. They needed to combine their strengths. They needed an alliance. And here they signed the Washington Treaty and created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the single greatest, most effective defensive alliance in the history of the world. Mr. Secretary General, leaders of NATO countries, foreign and defense ministers, representatives from partner nations and the European Union, and members of Congress, distinguished guests, welcome, welcome to the 2024 NATO Summit. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to host you in this milestone year, to look back with pride at all we've achieved and look ahead to our shared future with strength and with resolve. Together, we rebuilt Europe from the ruins of war, held high the torch of liberty during long decades of the Cold War. When former adversaries became fellow democracies, we welcomed them into the alliance. When war broke out in the Balkans, we intervened to restore peace and stop ethnic cleansing. And when the United States was attacked on September 11th, our NATO allies, all of you, stood with us, invoking Article 5 for the first time in NATO history, treating an attack on us as an attack on all of us. A breathtaking display of friendship that the American people will never, ever forget. Through all this history, when great changes occurred, people would ask, can NATO adapt? And every time we proved we could adapt, and we did, evolving our strategy to stay ahead of threats, reaching out to new partners to increase our effectiveness. And here with us today are countries from the Indo-Pacific region. They're here because they have a stake in our success, and we have a stake in theirs. Today, NATO is more powerful than ever, 32 nations strong. For years, Finland and Sweden were among our closest partners. Now they have chosen to officially join NATO, and because of the power and meaning of Article 5 guarantee, that's the reason. It was the most important aspect of the alliance in 1949, and it is still the most important aspect. I'd also note, Finland and Sweden joined the alliance not just because their leaders sought it, because their citizens called for it in overwhelming numbers. Remember, NATO's character is fundamentally democratic, always has been and always must continue to be. And today, NATO is better resourced than it ever has been. I want to pause on this because it's significant. In the year 2020, the year I was elected president, only 9 NATO allies are spending 2% of their defense GDP on defense. This year, 23 will spend at least 2%. And some will spend more than that. And the remaining countries that have not yet reached that milestone will get there soon. This remarkable progress, proof that our commitment is broad and deep, that we're ready, that we're willing, we're able to deter aggression, and defend every inch of NATO territory across every domain: land, air, sea, cyber, and space. My friends, it's good that we're stronger than ever, because this moment in history calls for our collective strength. Autocrats want to overturn global order, which is by and large kept for nearly 80 years and counting. Terrorist groups continue to plot evil schemes to cause suffering. In Europe, Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine continues, and Putin wants nothing less than Ukraine's total subjugation, to end Ukraine's democracy, to destroy Ukraine's culture, and to wipe Ukraine off the map. And we know Putin won't stop at Ukraine, but make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin. Especially with our full collective support. And they have our full support. Even before Russian bombs were falling in Ukraine, the alliance acted. I ordered the U.S. reinforcements at NATO's eastern flank. More troops, more aircraft, more capabilities. And now the United States has more than 100,000 troops on the continent of Europe. NATO moved swiftly as well, not only reinforcing the 4 existing battle groups in the east, but also adding 4 more in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia, essentially doubling NATO's strength on the eastern flank. Together, we've built a global coalition to stand with Ukraine. Together, we provided significant economic and humanitarian assistance. And together, we've supplied Ukraine with weapons it needs to defend itself: tanks, armored fighting vehicles, air defense systems, long-range missiles, and millions of munitions. The United States and nearly 24 allied partners have signed bilateral security agreements with Ukraine, and more countries will follow. Today, I'm announcing the historic donation of air defense equipment for Ukraine. The United States, Germany, the Netherlands, Romania, and Italy will provide Ukraine with the equipment for 5 additional strategic air defense systems. And in the coming months, the United States and our partners intend to provide Ukraine with dozens of additional tactical air defense systems. The United States will make sure that when we export critical air defense interceptors, Ukraine goes to the front of the line. They will get this assistance before anyone else gets it. All told, Ukraine will receive hundreds of additional interceptors over the next year, helping protect Ukrainian cities against Russian missiles, Ukrainian troops facing air attacks on their front lines. Make no mistake, Russia is failing in this war. More than 2 years into Putin's war of choice, his losses are staggering. More than 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded. Nearly 1 million Russians, many of them young people, have left Russia because they no longer see a future in Russia. And Kyiv, remember, fellas and ladies, was supposed to fall in 5 days, remember? Was still standing 2.5 years later and will continue to stand. All of the allies knew that before this war, Putin thought NATO would break. Today, NATO is stronger than it's ever been in its history. When this senseless war began, Ukraine was a free country. Today, it is still a free country. And the war will end with Ukraine remaining a free and independent country. Russia will not prevail. Ukraine will prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pivotal moment for Europe, for the transatlantic community, and I might add for the world. Let's remember, the fact that NATO remains the bulwark of global security did not happen by accident. It wasn't inevitable. Again and again at critical moments, we chose unity over disunion, progress over retreat, freedom over tyranny, hope over fear, Again and again, we stood behind our shared vision of a peaceful and prosperous transatlantic community. Here at this summit, we gather to proclaim NATO is ready and able to secure that vision today and well into the future. Let me say this. An overwhelming bipartisan majority of Americans understand that NATO makes us all safer. The fact that both Democratic and Republican parties are represented here today is a testament to that fact. The American people know that all the progress we've made in the past 75 years has happened behind the shield of NATO. And the American people understand what would happen if there was no NATO. Another war in Europe, American troops fighting and dying, dictators spreading chaos, economic collapse, catastrophes. Americans, they know we're stronger with our friends, and we understand this is a sacred obligation. As President Reagan put it, and I quote, "If our fellow democracies are not secure, we cannot be secure. If you are threatened, we are threatened. If you're not at peace, we cannot be at peace." Reagan knew it then, and we know it now. Our nations will continue to keep faith with what we pledged in years to come. Now, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to end my remarks in a slightly unusual way. NATO is an alliance of nations, but also made up of leaders. And one person in particular has done an extraordinary job leading NATO for the last decade. Secretary General Stoltenberg, would he come forward? So much of the progress we've made in the alliance is thanks to the Secretary. He's a man of integrity and intellectual rigor, a calm temperament in a moment of crisis, a consummate diplomat who works with leaders across the political spectrum and always finds a way to keep us moving forward. Secretary, you've guided this alliance through one of the most consequential periods in its history. I realize, I was talking to your wife, I personally asked you to extend your service. Forgive me. And you put your own plans on hold. When the Russian war in Ukraine began, you didn't hesitate. Today, NATO is stronger, smarter, and more energized than when you began. And 1 billion people across Europe and North America, indeed the whole world, will reap the rewards of your labor for years to come in the form of security, opportunity, and greater freedom. For these reasons, I'm pleased to award you the highest civilian honor the United States can bestow, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Ask the military to come forward. And ask him to read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Jens Stoltenberg. A visionary statesman and ceaseless defender of democracy, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has guided the NATO alliance through the most consequential decade for European security since World War II. When Vladimir Putin launched his brutal assault on the people of Ukraine, betting that NATO would break, Secretary General Stoltenberg proved him wrong. Under his stewardship, NATO has become stronger and more united than ever, and Americans for generations to come will benefit from the safer world he helped create. He demonstrates that the core truth of the alliance is as powerful now as it was 75 years ago. Together, we are stronger.
Distinguished guests, this concludes our program. Please rise for the retirement of the colors and remain at your seats for the departure of the leaders and spouses. Invités distingués, ceci conclut le programme. Veuillez rester debout pour la retraite des couleurs et restez à vos sièges pour le départ des dirigeants et épouses.